that Republicans did. It is going to split. You see behind me a coalition of people of every race and creed and color in both political parties. But I will say that the base of the Republican Party is going to be split for years to come if it is in fact Republicans who pass the gay marriage bill. And I hope and I pray that they instead do trust the people of New York. Let's have a referendum. Let's let the people decide the future of marriage in a fair and free vote. And I call on gay marriage advocates to join us in referring it and trusting the people of New York with this decision. Thank you.
We have Bishop Harry Jackson, who's going to speak about how this should not be equated with civil rights. He's the international presiding bishop of the International Coalition of Evangelical Churches. It was just launched recently and already has over 1,000 churches nationwide. Bishop.
Greetings, everyone. Same-sex marriage is not a civil right. Many African Americans have chafed at that notion because we understand the individual rights that our Constitution protects does not extend to this area of marriage. Marriage is designed to promote the good of the culture and the society. And from a national perspective, New York needs to see itself as a guardian for traditional marriage.
Right.
Everywhere where there's been a vote on marriage, you found that African Americans especially have rejected the civil rights argument because they know what this kind of activity will do long term, that it will fracture, redefine, and demean an institution that needs to be the bedrock of all society. Thank you.
We have Brian Brown of the National Organization for Families.
I'll be simple and direct. As my co-belligerent in the fight to protect marriage, Bishop Harry Jackson, has said, there is no right to redefine marriage. But don't misunderstand. Those of us gathered here today, black, white, Hispanic, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, people of no particular faith, we are here to stand up for a core civil right. We're here to stand up for the civil right of children to have both a mother and a father. We're here to stand up for the civil rights of religious organizations and individuals to not be punished, to not be marginalized, to not be equated in the law as bigots. But most importantly, we are here for the most fundamental and basic civil right, the right of the people to vote. 64 senators should not be making the decision. 62 senators should not be making the decision on the future of marriage. Instead, the entire electorate of New York should. This should go to an advisory referendum, and I have no doubt that the people of New York will do the same thing that has been done in California and Maine and 31 states. Whenever the people have had the chance to stand up for marriage, they have stood up to protect it as the union of one man and one woman. Thank you.
Let the people vote.
Let the people vote. Let the people vote. Let the people vote.
We have Jason McGuire of the New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedom.
My name is Jason McGuire, of course. I'm Executive Director of New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms. And we also were calling on the New York State Senate and the New York State Assembly to recognize the right of the people to have a vote on an issue of this magnitude. This is not something that should be decided by a handful of legislators, but it should be decided by the people of New York. This is an issue of great magnitude, and there's no reason for us to move as hastily as we have been. 63 is the magic number. Not senators, but 63,000 petitions that have been signed by New Yorkers all across this great state. There's a stack of them here. I know quarters are tight, but good a good shot. 63,000 petitions. That's an important number. That's an important number because more than 63 million Americans in 31 state elections have already voted on constitutional marriage amendments. A vote has gone to the people. And in those places, 40 million Americans, or 63% of the overall, have said that marriage should be defined between one man and one woman. The governor has been prone to say that 60%, and let me add that he rounds his numbers up rather liberally, but he said that 60% favors same-sex marriage. If that be true, there should be no worry about putting this to the people of New York State and letting them have a vote. We believe that the people should have a voice and the people should have a choice. It's time to put it to a vote. Let the people of New York State decide what will be the definition of marriage within New York State. Thank you very much.
If there's any questions for any of us, we're here for that.
Yeah, I have a question about the definition of marriage. In the assembly, the proponents were saying that the marriage evolved over several centuries. And at one time, marriage, the women were owned by the husband, and that was considered marriage. Which definition of marriage are you referring to? Why not evolve into this next phase? Marriage has evolved over the years.
What we're pointing to is the reality that in virtually every known human society, there is an institution called marriage. It's about bringing together males and females so that children have a known mother and a known father. And that although marriage is, the marriage in all of these cultures doesn't look like our own, which actually, frankly, has deep roots in Jewish and Christian culture. A lot of weird stuff human beings have come up with. Every society has recognized that the whole society has an interest in bringing together male and female so that children have a father as well as a mother.
But that didn't
yes, it does.
Marriage evolving into the next phase.
Well, what we think is that we are still in a society that needs to recognize that marriage is unique. It's just different. Okay? And there is no individual civil right to decide that your relationship ought to be considered a marriage. And I think that what the evolution you're describing would be harmful to our society. If same-sex marriage involves a rejection of the idea that marriage is about bringing together male and female, the two great halves of humanity, so children have a mother and father. If the government of New York says two men are a marriage, then marriage is clearly no longer based on that principle anymore. Can we change the meaning of all words? I mean, actually, I will stand with Abraham Lincoln on this question, right? He was once asked, if we call the tail of a dog a leg, how many legs does a dog have? And he said the answer is 4, because a tail is not a leg. But in any case, we'd say whether you agree or disagree, those who claim that the majority of New Yorkers support this new evolution in marriage ought to, like us, be willing to trust the people of New York. One thing we do know is that politicians in Albany did not create the institution called marriage, and they have no business redefining it without the vote of the majority.
Any other questions?
What has happened in the states that have already legalized it? What's happening in marriage there?
Well, we're seeing religious. Well, first of all, we're in the beginning stages, but we've seen. I actually looked at polling data in Massachusetts that shows a fairly sharp drop in just a few years in the number of people who believe that the ideal for a child is a married mother and father. We're seeing across the country the religious liberty impacts, which it's not just pastors who are talking. My understanding is that there was a letter from a Stanford law professor who's an expert on religious liberty, a Harvard Law School professor, Marianne Glendon, and one of the editors of a book called Same-Sex Marriage and Religious Liberty, that leading legal scholars are acknowledging that the foundational idea that equality requires gay marriage, the recognition, is going to impact people who disagree in good conscience. And that to equate support for marriage as the union of husband and wife with bigotry or hatred is to say we plan to use this law to marginalize and stigmatize people who disagree with us and who either, if they ground it in human nature or in the great principles laid out in Genesis, we are seeing that come true in practical ways, both for individuals and for religious organizations.
Are people worse off in those states now?
Well, the interesting thing that I was really interested in, the CDC released data on the well-being of gay teens, and I was really interested to see that in Massachusetts, which has had gay marriage since 2004, teens are, I think, around two times more likely to contemplate suicide than teens in Wisconsin, that has a marriage amendment passed in 2006 defining marriage as one man and one woman. So I don't think that gay marriage is going to benefit very many people. We see very low rates of entry by same-sex couples, very high rates of dissolution. I think it's going to be on that side largely a symbolic issue, and I understand symbols matter. They matter to us as well. And meanwhile, we will have government stepping forward to say that our traditional natural understanding of the family is now bigotry, and I think that's a problem.